All right, guys, welcome back. And today, what we're going to go ahead and talk about is security infrastructure, IPS versus IDS. Okay, security infrastructure, IPS versus IDS. By the end of this video, you guys should know what is the difference between an IPS and an IDS, different types of IDSs. Hey, isn't an IPS and an IDS the same thing as a firewall? Hey, where exactly would you put an IPS in your network? Where would you put an IDS in your network? Why exactly would you put the IDS outside the network or off to the side of the network? And why would you put your IPS in line with your network? So we're going to go ahead and talk about IPS versus IDS. Remember, we are still in the umbrella of security infrastructure. Okay, and let's go ahead and get a quick review of security infrastructure. It is the combination of hardware, software, policies, and practices that organizations use to protect information. Okay, so let's go straight to it, guys. IDS. It is an acronym. What does it stand for? Intrusion Detection System. Intrusion Detection System. And what does it do? It basically gathers logs and alerts. Keep this in mind and a habit in parentheses. It could be software. IDS can be a cube-like hardware piece of device. It can also go ahead and be software that is installed within a device. Okay, so that brings us to what would be IPS. IPS stands for Intrusion Prevention System. Okay, Intrusion Prevention System. And this is quite simple because literally all you have to really realize is the difference between D and P: intrusion prevention system, intrusion detection system. And as you guys can see, the major difference is logs, alerts, and takes action. Okay, so takes action is the major difference. It is basically what would go ahead and distinguish the difference between an IDS and an IPS. As you can see, the IDS is responsible for logs and alerts. The IPS is responsible for logs, alerts, and it takes action. Okay, that is the major significant difference. Okay, and it's looking for behaviors and signatures, and we'll get deeper into that. So let's go ahead and for those of you guys who are a visual learner, this right here is a basic, oversimplified visual representation of what exactly a network would look like. Okay, and let's work our way from left to, let's work our way from right to left. Okay, so from right to left, you have your internet. Okay, everybody loves Google, so on and so forth. So you have the internet. Your internet is going to go ahead and connect to your router. Your router generally connects to your firewall. Your firewall connects to your IPS. The IPS connects to the switch. Your switch, notice off to the side, we have the IDS. And then you go ahead and have your switch connected to your end host devices, your computers. Okay, and that is generally how a network would be laid out. For those of you guys who are watching this at home, a lot of these things are all in one, so to speak. Your switch, your firewall, your router is all provided to you all in one device by your internet service provider, which actually is going to be a really good anchor when we go ahead and move forward through with this presentation. But I want you to notice the major difference. The IDS, what does it stand for? Intrusion Detection System. Notice how that is off to the side. Your IPS, what does that stand for? Intrusion Prevention System. Okay, and this is a little silly. Okay, but it has really helped me. When I think of where do you put your IPS, you put it in the pipeline. Okay, pipeline. Okay, pipeline, your internet router, firewall, okay, and your IPS. And then that leaves, by logical terms, you have your IDS left over off to the side, right? And the reason you could technically go ahead and put your IDS in the pipeline, however, it is not recommended and it's not considered best practices. The name of the game, guys, is security and speed. Speed and security. Okay. And if you have a lot of different devices Okay, if you have a lot of different devices in your pipeline between your internet and your end host, your data is going to have to travel through a lot of channels, and that could and would potentially go ahead and slow down your network. Okay, and it comes to a perfect balancing act between having the best amount of speed with the best amount of security. And usually, when you give more to one, you're losing from the other, and when you give more to the other, you're losing more from one. Speed, security. That's the name of the game, guys. Speed and security. So going ahead and finding a perfect balance between that is critical. Okay. And let's go back to the OSI model because I want to go ahead and make sure that we look at this. And this is actually going to be a perfect presentation with regards to what's the difference between a firewall, an IPS, and an IDS. And I kind of already mentioned to that, and I already mentioned that, and I alluded to that, is with the evolution of technology and with companies trying to go ahead and get better and better and better devices, software, what is it computing languages, so on and so forth, better coding and whatnot. They're starting to merge these together. This would be a perfect visual representation, assuming if this was a stateless firewall, and we talked about that in our previous video. But I just want you to go ahead and think about this, and we're going to get deeper into what would be the differences between IDS and IPS. Okay, a little bit further down the road, but you already know that IPS, the major significant difference is it takes action. Hence, why you would want to actually put it on the pipeline. Okay, so let's go ahead and remember that a lot of these security hardware or software uh, devices, they're operating on a different level of the OSI model. Okay, so let's go ahead and types of firewalls. I kind of mentioned that already. As you guys can see, as the evolution of the firewalls continues, they're starting some firewalls can be considered a hey, it's a firewall with the IDS and it also has an IPS. Okay, because remember, we're dealing with different layers of what? OSI model. Okay, and we mentioned how yesterday how the kernel epoxy firewall, which is technically considered a fifth generation firewall, and the next generation firewall, those are starting to look at things at all layers of the OSI model compared to your stateless. Okay, compared to your stateless, which was basically just looking at what would be IP addresses, ports, and protocols. Okay, so just keep that in mind, and we'll go ahead. We'll look at this again one more time. We're going to do a quick little overview. Why IPS? What does it stand for? Intrusion Prevention System. It is in the pipeline between your internet and your switch. Okay, IDS is off to the side. IDS stands for Intrusion Detection System. It is responsible for logs and alerts. Okay, you don't want to necessarily put the IDS in the pipeline because that would basically slow down your network. And remember, the IDS, even if it logs and alerts you, it's not going to necessarily go ahead and stop the attack where an IPS would. We have differences between an IPS and a firewall because a stateless firewall, or depending on the type of firewall, is working on different levels of the OSI model, where an IPS could be working on other layers of the OSI model, right? This firewall, if it was considered stateless, it would be working on layer what would be 3 and 4. Okay, this IPS, depending on how it's configured, it can be working on 5 and 6 or 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so just this visual representation and just noticing that a lot of these devices are working on different layers of the OSI model, or you can have a new type of firewall that would basically combine all of these. The best picture or the best reference we made that to was going ahead and having their that your device that your internet service provider gives to you, okay, which is a router, wireless, and firewall, all built in one little unit. Okay, so let's go ahead, and that brings us to word of the day. Okay, what is word of the day, guys? And the word of the day is anomaly. Okay, guys, and you guys should already know what anomaly means. It basically means something outside of the norm, outside of the baseline. And this actually is a perfect word of the day because it actually goes ahead and it integrates extremely well with IDS and IPS. Okay, the reason why is because depending on the device, you can actually start to look at certain data points and determine whether or not, hey, this looks out of the norm. Let's go ahead, log, or potentially maybe even alert. Or, hey, this looks extremely out of the baseline. Let's go ahead and prevent this from even happening. Let's not get this data or this information in the network. Anomaly. Okay, so the definition is anomaly detection is a cybersecurity technique that detects unusual activity or behavior on a network. There's different types of anomalies. You have a statistical, you have a protocol, you have a traffic, you have a rule or heuristic, and then you have application based. So if you're thinking in your mind, hey, how exactly is the IDS working? Or hey, how exactly is the IPS working? Okay, it does work on what would be considered, this is just one variable, but it does work on the essence of anomaly, right? So if you're getting, the super silly example would be if you have a baseline in your network where 10 people log in 8 o'clock in the morning, and you've had that going on for the last 6 months, and out of nowhere you get 100 people trying to log in, log alert alert, log alert alert, right? That would be your intrusion prevention system, your intrusion detection system, right? Because the major difference is that your intrusion prevention system takes action. So keep that in mind. So that would be an example of statistical. Protocol would be something along the lines of, if you're using HTTP protocol, but let's just say that it's wired to use a different port. Remember, HTTP is using port 80, but if you're using that protocol on a different port and it doesn't look normal, that could potentially ring an alert, and so on and so forth, guys. So just looking at this application based, if you downloaded a new application or a new software, but within that application, there's something that is not normal with the code, or if the code is trying to do something that you wouldn't normally expect, that would be an example of going ahead, right? And remember, don't get lost in this. Just think about it like this. IDS, you log and you alert. IPS, you log, you alert, and you take action. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. This right here, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. We're going a little bit above and beyond what would be considered the CompTIA Security Plus certification. This right here, this you should know this, okay? But you should know this slide. You should know that there is different types of IDSs. And what does IDS stand for again? Intrusion Detection System. And you have your NIDS, Network Intrusion Detection System, okay? You have your HIDS, Host Intrusion Detection System, and you have your WIDS, Wireless Intrusion Detection System. Okay, so you have different types of IDSs, and it makes sense. Why does it make sense? Because we have our OSI model, we have our network, and we have different data going to different channels at different times continuously, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And every time you go and open a new web browser, this is going ahead and taking its process over and over and over and over again, right? Think of this as different stages. And if you just have a security guard on 3 and 5, okay, then you have a weakness, a vulnerability at maybe 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7, right? So just think of that as a silly little example, okay? But it does go ahead and paint the picture. So we have different types of IDSs. Let's go ahead and take a look into them. So NIDS, okay, Network Intrusion Detection System. So this right here, guys, this is our methods. So our Network Intrusion Detection System, there's technically 3 methods, okay, and this is would be the different types of them. So one of them is what it's called a signature-based detection. So signature-based detection is nothing more than a fingerprint, right? That's kind of what your signature is. It's kind of like a fingerprint. And certain malware, certain viruses, they're gonna have a fingerprint, right? Unless it's 0 day, which is a different topic for a different day. But if there's a well-known virus or well-known malware, that is going to go ahead and it's going to have its fingerprint. And you can go ahead and configure your network intrusion detection system to detect that fingerprint. And based upon that fingerprint, if there's a match, so to speak, hello, hello, alert, alert, log, log, right? And then you as a cybersecurity professional, you as the agent, so to speak, will be able to go ahead and take a deeper dive into what exactly that alert is and what exactly is your log telling you. Anomaly based detection, we literally just talked about that in word of the day. Remember, you had your statistical, you had your application, you had your rule, you had your protocols, heuristic, rule, that was considered the same. Let's see if we missed one. Did we miss one? Word of the day, protocol, and then traffic. Okay, so IP addresses, MAC addresses, things of that nature, so on and so forth. So remember, you have different methods, signature based. Okay, so that's kind of like with malware, or when certain software or anything along those lines is going to have a particular signature. Your network intrusion detection system can go ahead and find that fingerprint, find that signature. Anomaly, we went through that. We went ahead and really talked about that. Third one is hybrid. Obviously, you can have both. Just remember, what's the name of the game? Speed, security. You want good security, you want good speed. The more things that you impose into your network, the higher probability that things are going to go ahead and slow down. And sometimes it might even give you a false sense of security. Okay. You know what they say, less is more, so on and so forth. So let's go on to the OSI model. So remember, when we're talking about network intrusion detection system, we are floating around this area right here. Okay, we're floating around layer 2, we hit MAC addresses, layer 3, IP addresses, layer 4, that would be considered protocols, so on and so forth. Okay, and now we talk about host intrusion detection system. Another word for a computer, okay, if you are on your laptop, if you are on your smartphone, that is technically considered a host. Remember how the world of computers operates right now. We operate on a server client. Host is another word for client. Client is another word for laptop. Laptop is another word for computer. Okay, so host is basically the end device. It is what the user is using. Okay, in this case, host intrusion detection system, there's two methods. You have an agent based method and you have an agentless method. Okay. And this is really similar to what would be almost like what would be antivirus, so to speak. But host intrusion detection system, you have two methods. One of them is you install the software on each individual host. So if you have 100 computers in your corporation, okay, just I mean, I could imagine they have a lot more computers, but let's just say for sake of argument, you have 100 computers. Each individual computer is going to go ahead and have this agent-based host intrusion detection system. So you install the software on each individual computer. Now, as you could imagine, this is a little heavier, and it's heavier on the system because that system, that computer that you install the software, is going to continuously use CPU. It's going to go ahead and use RAM. It's going to go ahead and use hard drive space. Okay. While it's heavier, it is better for data review. Why is it better for data review? Because it's literally right there in the computer that's actually going ahead and trying to figure out and detect anything, any signatures or any anomalies, so on and so forth. Okay. Agentless is a little bit more where it would basically not be installed on the computer. It would be installed, it would almost kind of be like a server, so to speak. And I might be speaking out of turn here, but that's the best way to look at it. Agent based, the software is installed in the client. Agentless, okay, nothing is installed on the host, but the traffic that passes through that, it would almost kind of be like an IDS off to the side server that's actually looking at all the data. And that would be considered lighter. So it'd be lighter on your resources, but at the other side of the coin, you have less data to review. Okay, or is not as thorough. And once again, we are the OSI model when it comes to host intrusion detection system. We would be playing right here, guys, with the application, with the presentation. So you start to see why there's different IDSs, right, for different things. On our NIDS, which was our network intrusion detection system, we were dealing with the 3, 4, and 5. With our HIDS, now we're dealing with 6 and 7. We're dealing with different layers of the OSI model, right? So now we're getting security guards at each and every, almost each and every category, which is great. Which gives us better security. And lastly, we have our wireless. I don't know about you guys, but I believe that wireless is going to go ahead and rule the world, or at least a lot of us are going into what would be wireless. I mean, some of you guys might be on Wi-Fi right now as we speak, as you're watching this video, and there is an intrusion detection system for wireless. And the methods on this, mind you, this is a little bit oversimplified presentation because you can dive in deeper. There's white papers on this that are literally thousands of pages long, so you can definitely get lost in there. But the whole idea is to simplify this. Different types. One of them is considered a standalone, and that would basically be almost like an AP. And for those of you who don't know what an AP is, that is an acronym which stands for access point, which is basically a device that would go ahead and signal out a specific Wi-Fi channel. And that would be a standalone. So you would have something similar to an AP. Okay, your AP would go ahead and that would literally go ahead and review exactly the wireless channels and see what's going out there in the network. Or you can have something that is integrated. So going back to what would basically be that little device that you get from your internet service provider, you can go ahead and have integrated software within that AP, within that device, to go ahead and find and detect intrusions. Okay. With that being said, guys, remember what we talked about today. Here's the big key takeaway, guys. I'm the type of guy, if you can just take one thing away every single day, you are winning, you are learning, you are moving forward. Okay. The major difference between an IPS and an IDS is that an IPS takes action. Both devices, whether it be software or whether it be hardware, they're going to log, they're going to alert the cybersecurity professional who's responsible for it. However, the IPS, P stands for pipeline. It's in within the pipeline between the internet and your switch. And the major difference is that it takes action. If you can take that away, you are definitely on a good path, so to speak. But we did talk about a tremendous amount of information today, and we'll just go ahead and leave it here with regards to a IDS and an IPS. But before we do, just let's get one more thing. So just remember that there's different types of IDSs, okay? And you have your NIDS, HIDS, WIDS, network, host, wireless. And the reason why you have different what would be intrusion detection systems is because we take a look at our OSI model, our framework, okay? And as silly as it sounds, just realize that data does go back and forth every single time you are on the network through one of these layers. And we as cybersecurity professionals, we want to go ahead and utilize our speed and utilize our security. Right, speed and security. And if we can go ahead and find a lightweight application or a lightweight device that can go ahead and monitor these categories, the safer our network would be. Okay, guys, so that does it for our presentation of security infrastructure, IPS versus IDS. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to ask. Other than that, I will see you guys on the next one.